Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl. I'm broadcasting to you from beautiful Indiana. I'm here with my good friends Dan and Angel and Katherine and Jason. Today we're starting a new book. It's called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I think that's how you say his name. And this is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. Previously, we've discussed nonfiction books that, share some kind of a self-development or business development or relationship development or communication or something like that kind of a book. And this one is a little bit different. This one's a fictional story, and it's going to share a message as well. Not entirely sure what the message is yet. I think it's kind of like a meaning of life type of book. So we'll get into that. And but before we get going, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then Katherine, you can take it and start reading from there.
I think you're muted.
How about now? How is this? Check, check. This is Angel down here in South Carolina.
That's good. How am I coming through, guys? Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Great to see you again. Great to be starting a new book. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Here in Sisseck in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Good morning, it's Katherine Clement. All right, so I'm just going to read, I'm not going to read like the very, very, very beginning, but I'm starting just after where it lists all the chapters. So it says, I can never be all the people I want and live all the lives I want. I can never train myself in all the skills I want. And why do I want? I want to live and feel all the shades, tones, and variations of mental and physical experience possible in my life. That's by Sylvia Plath. And then the next page. Between life and death, there is a library, she said, and within that library, the shelves go on forever. Every book provides a chance to try another life you could have lived, to see how things would be if you had made other choices. Would you have done anything different if you had the chance to undo your regrets? A conversation about rain. 19 years before she decided to die, Nora Seed sat in the warmth of the small library at Hazleton School in the town of Bedford. She sat at a low table staring at a chessboard. Nora, dear, it's natural to worry about your future, said the librarian, Mrs. Elm, her eyes twinkling. Mrs. Elm made her first move, a knight hopping over the neat row of white pawns. Of course you're going to be worried about the exams, but you could be anything you want, Nora. Think of that, all of that possibility. It's exciting. Yes, I suppose it is. A whole life in front of you. A whole life. You could do anything. Live anywhere. Somewhere a bit less cold and wet. Nora pushed a pawn forward 2 spaces. It was hard not to compare Mrs. Elm to her mother, who treated Nora like a mistake in need of correction. For instance, when she was a baby, her mother had been so worried Nora's left ear stuck out more than her right that she'd used sticky tape to address the situation, then disguised it beneath a woolen bonnet. I hate the cold and wet, added Mrs. Elm for emphasis. Mrs. Elm had short gray hair and a kind and mildly crinkled oval face sitting pale above her turtle green polo neck. She was quite old, but she was also the person most on Nora's wavelength in the entire school, and even on days when it wasn't raining, she would spend her afternoon break in the small library. Coldness and wetness don't always go together, Nora told her. Antarctica is the driest continent on Earth. Technically, it's a desert. Well, that sounds up your street. I don't think it's far enough away. Well, maybe you should be an astronaut, travel the galaxy. Nora smiled. The rain is even worse on other planets. Worse than Bedfordshire? On Venus, it's pure acid. Mrs. Elm pulled a paper tissue from her sleeve and delicately blew her nose. See, with a brain like yours, you can do anything. A blond boy Nora recognized from a couple of years below her ran past outside the rain-speckled window, either chasing someone or being chased. Since her brother had left, she'd felt a bit unguarded out there. The library was a little shelter of civilization. Dad thinks I've thrown everything away now I've stopped swimming. Well, far be it from me to say, but there is more to this world than swimming really fast. There are many different possible lives ahead of you. Like I said last week, you could be a glaciologist. I've been researching, and it was then that the phone rang. 1 minute, said Mrs. Elm softly. I'd better get that. A moment later, Nora watched Mrs. Elm on the phone. Yes, she's here now. The librarian's face fell in shock. She turned away from Nora, but her words were audible across the hushed room. Oh, no, no. Oh, my God. Of course. 19 years later. The man at the door. 27 hours before she decided to die, Nora Seed sat on her dilapidated sofa, scrolling through other people's happy lives, waiting for something to happen. And then, out of nowhere, something actually did. Someone, for whatever peculiar reason, rang her doorbell. She wondered for a moment if she couldn't get to the door at all. She was, after all, already in her night clothes, even though it was only 9 p.m. She felt self-conscious about her oversized eco-warrior t-shirt and her tartan pajama bottoms. She put on her slippers to be slightly more civilized and discovered that the person at the door was a man, and one she recognized. He was tall and gangly and boyish with a kind face, but his eyes were sharp and bright, like they could see through things. It was good to see him, if a little surprising, especially as he was wearing sports gear and he looked hot and sweaty despite the cold, rainy weather. The juxtaposition between them made her feel even more slovenly than she had done 5 seconds earlier. But she'd been feeling lonely, and though she'd studied enough existential philosophy to believe loneliness was a fundamental part of being a human in an essentially meaningless universe, it was good to see him. Ash, she said, smiling. It's Ash, isn't it? Yes, it is. What are you doing here? It's good to see you. A few weeks ago, she'd been sat playing her electric piano, and he'd run down Bancroft Avenue and had seen her in the window here at 33A and given her a little wave. He had once, years ago, asked her out for a coffee. Maybe he was about to do that again. It's good to see you too, he said, but his tense forehead didn't show it. When she'd spoken to him in the shop, he'd always sounded breezy, but now his voice contained something heavy. He scratched his brow, made another sound, but didn't quite manage a full word. You running? A pointless question. He was clearly out for a run, but he seemed relieved momentarily to have something trivial to say. Yeah, I'm doing the Bedford half. It's this Sunday. Oh, right, great. I was thinking of doing a half marathon, and then I remembered I hate running. This had sounded funnier in her head than it did as actual words being vocalized out of her mouth. She didn't even hate running, but still, she was perturbed to see the seriousness of his expression. The silence went beyond awkward into something else. You told me you had a cat, he said eventually. Yes, I have a cat. I remembered his name, Voltaire, a ginger tabby. Yeah, I call him Volts. He finds Voltaire a bit pretentious. It turns out he's not massively into 18th century French philosophy and literature. He's quite down to earth, for a cat. Ash looked down at his slippers, at her slippers. I'm afraid, I think he's dead. What? He's lying very still by the side of the road. I saw the name on the collar. I think a car might have hit him. I'm sorry, Nora. She was so scared of her sudden switch in emotions right then that she kept smiling, as if the smile could keep her in the world she had just been in, the one where Volts was alive and where this man she'd sold guitar songbooks to had rung her doorbell for another reason. Ash, she remembered, was a surgeon. Not a veterinary one, a general human one. If he said something was dead, it was, in all probability, dead. I'm so sorry. Nora had a familiar sense of grief. Only the sertraline stopped her crying. Oh, God. She stepped out onto the wet, cracked paving slabs of Bancroft Avenue, hardly breathing, and saw the poor ginger-furred creature lying on the rain-glossed tarmac beside the curb. His head grazed the side of the pavement, and his legs were back as if in mid-gallop, chasing some imaginary bird. Oh, Volts. Oh, no. Oh, God. She knew she should be experiencing pity and despair for her feline friend, and she was, but she had to acknowledge something else. As she stared at Voltaire's still and peaceful expression, that total absence of pain, there was an inescapable feeling brewing in the darkness. Envy.
I think these first two have at least for me, a bit, but I don't know about you guys.
Shall we stop?
I'm, well, ask everybody else. I mean,
Yeah, jump
I,
out, Dan.
well,
Share
in
your
the,
thoughts.
okay, in the first part where it says a conversation about rain, this takes me back to like my grandmother especially. She was always trying to build me up and build into me that you can do and be whatever you work towards, set your sights towards. Doesn't always mean that you'll get there or gain it, but you can't be afraid of going after it either. You have to be willing to step out and get into life and be a part of life. But at the same time, coming from my background with my real mom and stepdad, the as I got older, the juxtaposition kind of I fought with myself at times because, like with her, there were times where I didn't want to be out there. I didn't want to, uh, show myself for fear of, in some ways, doing something in my head I thought might be wrong or not, even though probably nothing more than just me trying to do something or whatever. But I think, as I moved down here more and got away from and got more of that built into me, I was willing to step out and take more chances and try and live a little more. And so therefore, learning that it's not bad to get out and try. You just learn that, okay, not everything is the right, not right. Or you learn that, oh, that's not for me, let me move or try something else. But I think so many people get so tunnel visioned and into one thing or believe so much of what they're told sometimes that it becomes that recurring track in their life. They just kind of stay on that track. And then the second part about the 19, where you can clearly tell she doesn't really seem to have done a whole lot different with her life. She's still kind of in that, I guess, figuring things out and just doing what needs to be done, I guess. That's how it comes across to me. And actually, to me, it seems like she maybe kind of likes this guy, even though she doesn't want to admit it to herself. And, was hoping he'd really go, which we all do. I think at times we tend to like somebody, well, oh, I wish they would let me know somehow, or, give me some clue, or, so I can latch onto that and maybe, but then she finds out, oh, he's just there to tell me that my cat's dead. And having lived through seeing my cat get killed, run over by a car, I know that look, I know that seeing. And then when I was watching my brother and sister-in-law's one dog, the one dog died overnight, and I found a stiff dead dog. That's a weird feeling, a weird look, but there is peacefulness in it too. And for me though, I didn't get envy out of it. I just like felt pity and hurt and pain for my brother and sister-in-law, because this was one of their dogs that they'd had for years. So in that, I think that can be also a metaphor for sometimes how people look at life and other people's lives compared to their life. The envy and the jealousy, that kicks in from, oh, well, they're living and doing all these things, and why isn't my life like that? And I think that's partly because, going back to like that first chapter, where you have your whole life laid out ahead of you, you have to be willing to go out and do what you want and take that chance.
Anyone else have thoughts on those first two chapters? I agree with you, Dan. It's interesting how, especially in this day and age, I mean, we do have access to basically be or do anything that we want to be or do, right? Learn anything we want to learn. Even if you can't afford to go to a college, there's a lot of free education online and stuff, And yet we tend to kind of buttonhole ourselves into maybe a profession that our parents had, or, something like that. We limit ourselves so much. And as far as your second point on the envy, I know that feeling of envy when somebody passes. Just had a friend's friend pass yesterday that I help people die. What I call sing them through. And so I sang for him yesterday. And, he was in a tremendous amount of pain. He had cancer, but that freedom from pain, it's not that I don't want to live, but that freedom from pain, I envy a lot. And so I totally get that. She does seem, obviously, as somewhat of a depressed person here and not happy with her life. And just going through the motions, like keeping that smile on her face. I know everybody here can connect with that, where you're feeling like total despair, and yet you put a smile on your face and tell everybody you're fine, and pretend like things are. And I don't know, I mean, I think we do that for many reasons. Sometimes we're just trying to spare somebody else discomfort, because I mean, I'm unhappy. Why should I make you unhappy too? Or sometimes for some people, they maybe see that as a sign of weakness if they reveal their, especially for men, probably, if they reveal their despair, that the other person will view them as weak. It's a shame, because we're human beings, you guys. And, most of the time, all of the time for me, but I would say that probably for the majority of the population, when somebody looks at you and smiles and says they're fine, you can feel whether they're fine or not. Whether that's a fake smile or not, So I think the more honest we can be about our emotions, the less trapped we will be concerning our emotions, because I think a lot of people get trapped in their emotions, not being able to express them, and that drives them to this place of depression and not wanting to live and having envy of death. So it's just my thoughts.
Interesting that you made that point, because from my viewpoint, and there's a, as you guys know, my beliefs and where I've come from, there's a Christian song by a Christian artist named Matthew West, and I can't remember the actual name, but there's a song where he talks about this very issue about where, and I think we all do this, we mask ourselves to a certain point because one, and I think for men and women both, we don't want the world to see that we're just as human as everybody else and that we have issues and problems. But, in the song, he says, you smile and say, somebody says, how you doing? You smile and you say, everything's fine, everything, um, nothing bad, everything's going good. But inside you, you're screaming like you really want to tell them, no, I'm this, like this, structure. And I just wanted, like I was venting to Samantha earlier. I'm like, right now, with everything I've got going on in my life, she was venting back to me a little bit of some of the stuff she was going on. You have things that you constantly deal with, Katherine, on a day-to-day basis. And we all know about some of these things, and we've all been here to help share and build each other up. That's why we love this group. But out there and to show that to the world, I think, in general, nobody likes to show that they're struggling, because if you look out in the natural world in the wild and stuff, being weak tends to get you attacked and taken down and destroyed, and if you come out of it, you're maimed, hurt, and you may not survive long after that. In the, human world, you can maybe survive, but you never really, in some ways, you never fully get to where you feel like you should be or want to be. So you then guard yourself even more and don't let on. And that's sad because I think if we could learn to trust and share with people like we do here with each other, and know that none of us is going to look down at each other and we build each other up, that there's strength in that in building each other up and letting each other know that, hey, I have just as many issues and problems and stuff like you do. Let me come alongside you and, sit with you or share with you or, bring you back to a point where you can move forward and maybe be in a more positive vein to step forward. Doesn't mean it's going to continue all that way because so much in life is going on that we all deal with. But when you have places where you can safely open and talk about things, it does help and it makes you be able to get it out. Like for me, a lot of times I tell people if I can speak and get it out of me, even the speaking, getting it out of me does so much because I'm not sitting and I'm not ruminating in my brain constantly and it's not going, wheels spinning around, like a train on a track that's sitting there and the wheels are spinning, but it's not able to go anywhere. And I think that's something that, and the pandemic, I think, helped highlight that in some ways, that people really, more people are hurting than what everybody realizes, and that we need a little more compassion and understanding for each other rather than that cynical and putting down. Yes, there are times when you need to say, hey, buck up, you can get through this. It's not as bad as you see it, but sometimes we need to hear that too. But we also need to have that comfort and that somebody come along and say, I understand, I've been there too.
Yeah, I find it really interesting about how everyone can have such a different take on what life should be about, the meaning of life, or even just the meaning of a feeling and something happening. And it's a wonderful thing, I think, that we can see things in so many different facets, and none of them are wrong. But it just kind of goes to show me that there are so many different ways of thinking about things that, much in the same way that, you know, the book in the beginning was telling us we have so many choices, so many different paths we might take in our life. We also have so many different choices and opportunities, really, to look at things in a different way. And much to what you were saying, I think, earlier, Dan, in regards to putting yourself out there and being part of life and not being afraid of taking risks. We need to sometimes just go for it, and you know, other times it's okay to pull back and think for a little bit. And like the book would say, we have so many opportunities and paths and things that we can be in our life, but we can't be all the people, all the things that we might want to be. And I'm not familiar with the first chapter of this book, but it sounds to me like, just from this short reading, that the character in the book is very well read, but perhaps didn't go out and experience things on their own, which also would be fine. And perhaps they did actually go out and experience a lot of things. I don't know. But I think that no matter what, when it comes to the end for us, there's gonna be that sense of perhaps, you know, what possibilities did we not give a chance for in our lives, or, you know, something along that line. And then that it just, you know, the thought of trying to live your life and not have any regrets. I mean, it seems a little like it's almost impossible, but just takes me back, because at kind of going through a point in my life where I have to kind of rethink and better understand why I've chosen to, you know, the career I've chosen and the path I've chosen, and all, you know, and kind of basically why I haven't done as many things as I may want to. But now, sort of like, the world is opening up, it seems like, and I kind of have to rethink why it is that I've sort of chosen the path that I've chosen. There's nothing wrong with the path, but there's also so many other things out there, and so it's just so much to think about and contemplate, but very enlightening. And I appreciate what you were saying there, Dan, and also what you're saying there, Katherine, in regards to the pain we feel in life, and sometimes wanting that, you know, having that envy of those that don't have the pain, or just wanting to have it all, you know, be to not have that pain anymore. And you know, but I'm just a recent understanding from from people who have thought about this a lot more than myself, is that idea that we are, you know, why we are even here to begin with, why we chose to be here, from and that the idea that we chose to be here to experience all the things that we're experiencing, that it's not just some unguided or or purposeless type of a thing. That everything has a meaning, that we touch everyone in it, and everything in our lives, and bring meaning to every event and every person we interact with. So it's all how you look at it. So this is it's amazing that a short paragraph, short reading like that can make you think so much. But thank you. Thanks for the great reading, and looking forward to hearing what everyone else has to say.
Well, now between you and Katherine, now another thought came up in my mind is, why do, and I think we all do this, even especially like I did it with my nieces and nephews. I told them, you can go out, my brother and his wife did that with their kids. I'm going to say, Samantha, I'm sure you told that to your kids. My grandmother told that to me. I'm sure, Katherine, you did that same thing to your kids. You can go and do and be. Why is it we do that even as we've gotten older and we've lived, and we kind of understand that? I think we understand you can't do it all, but yet we still try and go and say you can do it all and do, why do we do that? Is it because deep down we still wish we could really make changes that we're kind of tied from what we're tied into, or we feel we're tied into, and because we've gotten older we become more afraid again, or we feel that we chose not, so we're stuck? I mean, why do we do that? Why do we, when they're younger, do we really say all that, and then as we get older, and yet we juxtapose it against where we're at in our lives with what we're thinking, and then dealing with, like me this morning, if I could only get to a point where I can just get everything squared away to where I can move forward with my life and I'll be happy again, that type of thing. What is it that makes us do that? And is it something we do from inside, or is it something external, or is it both?
Well, I think we all would like to know that we have, like, if there are choices, that we have those choices. We'd like to be aware of them, but also, how's the best way of going at it? I know when I was younger, I didn't want to go off into a path that I felt like I'd end up then halfway down, feel like I made the wrong decision. But I think probably one of the best things that could have been told to me when I was younger was that it's good to focus on one career at a time, and however, don't feel like that once you have chosen it, that's all you can do, and that it's very possible for anyone to have multiple careers in their life. That I think that would have helped a lot, to have someone just say, pick your top 3 or 4, and then pick your favorite one and start with that and see where it takes you, and then just know you can always change if you need to, but try to be your best at it. Give it your best shot for the first one, see if it works out. And maybe you want to do that for the rest of your life, or maybe you want to change at some point. But I think we want, I can't speak for parents, but I think we just want, even friends, we want them to have the knowledge to be able to make the best decisions for themselves.
Okay, but that makes me throw this out. Why are there some people that, because of where they're at in life and their surroundings and environment, this is going to come out the wrong way no matter how I say it, but I'm going to try. Why are some people seem to be in their area of life, and it's because that's the only way they had to go? Because there are some people that really do not have a lot of variables available, but yet we still tell them, oh, you can do and be anything you want, because it's taught in school, it's taught in this, it's taught, it's a prevalent theme out there, but yet there are some people throughout the world, everywhere, that where they're at, there's really not much more to do than just what's been done all along. So how
Well,
do
I think there are families where parents are just like, you're going to be a lawyer, or you're going to be a doctor, or you're going to be this, or you're going to be that, and that's and they just kind of put that on their children, and then I guess there's something to be said positive about that too, that then the child either does that and goes on to do that, or um, kind of pushes back and makes a decision on their own to do something else. And then there's also our environments that maybe can force us to be a certain thing because, hey, we live on an island and we're surrounded by water, so we're going to do something on the water, or there's but there's nothing. I think there's nothing wrong with any of that. It's just and to some aspect, maybe it's harder to make a decision if you think that you can do everything, or do pick from everything, that we have a difficulty in deciding. And but I think that's kind of what we all have to figure out for ourselves. And but it goes back to like what you were saying to begin with, is don't be afraid to just go ahead and put yourself out there, because we get in that paralysis of analyzing everything. We never really get something done, or we get distracted, like we were talking about earlier, distracted by all these other little things, and don't actually make any real headway in one career or another. Don't really give things enough of an opportunity to unfold for us to where we can really enjoy the career, or whatever it might be. We're always looking at somewhere else for our enjoyment, rather than having that commitment for that period of time to say we're going to really pursue that one career, and that for a definite purpose. It kind of goes back, and that was what do you feel like your major definite purpose is for making that decision, or just deciding to be a foot doctor, or deciding to be a lawyer, or whatever. I wanted to be a marine biologist at one point. I wanted to be an architect at one point. I learned a lot about both, but I became neither. So
But you still could. That's the point.
yeah, that's true. And that's kind of where I'm at now, is well, I could do a 90-degree or 180 and do something completely different with my life, or and so I'm having to decide why are the reasons that I've chose to. I usually kind of go with with like what I think is the best option. But now I'm thinking more about in line with purpose. Like, do we do things just because we think, oh, that's the best thing to do? You'll make the most money, or you'll be the most highly regarded, or it'll be the easiest, or do you make your decision on the purpose that on a like a maybe it's a higher power purpose, or maybe it's just that you find you think you would be more of a service to the world, but more in a purpose driven idea, because it seems like if you have no purpose, and I think I've read something like this, where if you don't have a purpose for then you're more easily distracted, kind of a thing, I think. So maybe a combination of having all that, I don't know, but that's what I'm working on right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think having a purpose is really important, and because of all this underlying things that we go through, I mean, I feel like for the most part, we're all kind of have these questions in the mind of what is the point? I mean, I don't know, maybe not everybody does. I have that a lot, is what is the point? Yeah, I know you do, Catherine. I have no doubt. And Dan, I'm sure we all, I think a lot of us do, and we're afraid to have those discussions. Like Dan, you were saying earlier, we go through life, we've got the smile on our face, and we're just kind of like, yeah, I'm fine. But underlying, we have all these questions of what, maybe the deepest question, and that I come across in my mind a lot of times is that, what is the point of all of this? And I feel like if we don't have any kind of a purpose, is that we will fall into that more and more. And I see it out in the world. So many people are so depressed, and they don't even know why they're depressed. And they're not even sure what purpose they have in the world. And sure, we have our grandmother, or we have our teacher, or we have our family member, whoever it is, when we're young, that's telling us, you can do anything you want, you can be anything you want, you can experience anything you want. And yet, as we grow up, we realize that there are other factors involved in that. There isn't just an instantaneous, oh, I have this thought, I'm going to be this thing, I'm going to do that thing, and it's going to happen. No, there's all the variables of our life going on with us. There's our community that's happening. There's the schools that are available to us. There's our financial situation. There's our family members that are influencing us. There's all these different factors along that we come up against in our lives, and sure that maybe it is possible for us to be or do anything, but then we come across a choice of what path, say we want to be an astronaut, that's one that we're told, you can be an astronaut, you can be the president, you can be whatever, and you come up against this barrier to becoming that thing, which is a whole bunch of learning, or it's a financial outlay, or it's you've got to go against what your parents think you should do, or I mean, there's just so many different factors as we go through life that push us in one direction or another, and in the realm of our decision making processes, that really kind of make us face, is it really possible, for us to do anything that we want? Because we tend to not necessarily want to push through all these difficult barriers in order to achieve those things. And in some ways, I feel like that's good, because then it helps us determine, do we really want to do that thing? Maybe I thought I wanted to, but now that I've come across, and here's all this stuff I have to face in order to achieve that, I don't want to do those things. And then we're faced with all of this nowadays, all the social media stuff that is, we can look up on the internet and see all these people doing this thing that we supposedly thought that we wanted to do. And because we didn't want to push through these barriers, we're not there. And then we feel guilty for not having done whatever it is, and we see all the other people doing all these amazing things, or what we think might be amazing or whatever. And then I see the flip side of it, of those same people doing those random things that we think that we want to do. They're watching us do whatever we're doing, and they're thinking they want to do what we want to do. And so there's this big contradiction of we do whatever we want, but once we get there, are we even happy doing whatever that is? It's this weird, I don't know. Our whole universe is so weird. I just can't even understand it most of the time. And I'm just like, all right, well, I'm like, we were talking about why do parents tell their kids they can do whatever, and it's like, for me, I told my kids, yeah, you can do anything you want to do. And I also told them that, you don't have to do it forever. I know when I was growing up, that was the thing. You get a job, you stay in it forever, you retire and happily ever after or whatever. And I was like, that's not reasonable unless you are just one of those people who woke up when they were a child and realized they wanted to do this thing, be this thing, da da da, and that was their purpose. And they just knew it from the get-go. I never knew. I never had any idea of what I really wanted to do for any long period of time. I had a lot of different interests that I explored, and then there was some things I didn't get to explore because I decided to become a parent, and then I went down that path, and that's a whole different path. And there are some limiting things to when you choose that path. You kind of choose your children and their well-being over whatever you might have thought that you wanted at some point when you were a child, and so as much as I wanted to tell my kids you can do anything, be anything, which is to some extent true, you still have all these things you have to overcome. There's going to be all these obstacles you have to overcome in order to be those things. And if you choose to be a parent, you probably aren't going to be able to do so. I mean, it is what it is. We can't do everything, but then we can do anything. It's whatever. But I also was telling my kids, before they became parents, I was like, I'm telling you that when you become a parent, you're going to be sacrificing a lot of your own, and of course, as kids, you don't hear what your parents say, you just do what you're going to do. And I don't regret becoming a parent by any means. I don't regret that at all. But I also see how if I had not, then I would have these other things that I, might have done, So when I was younger and my kids were growing up, I was like trying to express those things to them of I don't know. It's just, it's a weird thing, as a parent, you want everything for your kids, but you recognize they're only going to have some, they're not going to have everything that you want for them. And, particularly if your kids don't want what you think they should have, or they don't want to do what you think they should do. So, I don't know, I'm rambling now.
No, but that's a great point because, and I saw Angel shaking her head and smirking a little bit, that when you said, you tell them, but they don't listen to what you're saying because they're, I didn't believe my mom on some things, when she told me something, but I think my mom here, one of the best things she ever did for me, and because she had the money, she could have done it. She could have paid for me and my brother to go to school, college. She could have. She didn't. She chose not to. She expressed her desire for us to go to school and get degrees so we would have that additional stepping stone for getting us to where we wanted to go, and she did lay out some things, and I think she kind of, how do I say this? Guided my brother a little bit more, but that's because that was her born child. I was her, I'm her son by osmosis through my real mother, her sister. But she told us both, if you want to go to school, you're going to have to do it. That's going to be your choice, something you'll have to do. I want you to go. I desire that you go. but I'm not paying for it. You know, I think that's what fueled both of us into deciding to go to school and working our way through and doing it, on our own with no help, no grants, no scholarships or anything like that, But that was then that choice that we made. But I could have gone off and just worked or whatever, or done something or found a trade or something like that, But going back to some of what you were saying, when I was younger and I was, when I first moved down here, I was learning to play the violin in my hometown in Spokane. I love the violin, and you guys know I love music. I've always loved music, and that's my release. But when I moved down here, because going back, I wanted to fit in, and kind of seeing the way the kids were down here, and and wanting to become friends with some of the friends that my brothers here had, I let go of doing the violin, even though I loved it, because then I would have been looked at, like weird or whatever. This is in 6th grade, so you're very subjected to peer pressure. You don't understand that, you can still do that and still somehow make friends, but back then it was different. I now, in retrospect, I wish I would have continued, because I was good. I could, who knows where that could have led. But now at 60 years old, it's kind of like I would love to learn again, but to have the money and with all my other things going on, I'm kind of feeling stuck and limited there. So, that goes back to life, and decisions and things you make then tend to carry forward, and then actively help you move and guide you forward until, like you said, Jason, until you get to a point where you realize that, well, I can really stop and change and do whatever I want if I decide to, and put my energy in that, and it's then my choice, and I have to deal with the consequences, whatever I choose at that point. So it's interesting how, like I said, these two little first chapters of this book are drawing out so much on a fiction book.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that of I was driving home from South Carolina yesterday. Was that yesterday? I don't know, whatever day, Thursday. I'm lost track of my days. It wasn't yesterday. It was Thursday. Anyway, and I was sitting there just having one of those random thoughts, because I had listened to part of this book as an audio book on my trip, and was thinking about this idea of we could do whatever in our lives, and that I chose the family route, and then chose the marriage route, and chose that, and then I was asking myself, I'm like, but if I wanted to do something different now, what would that mean? And what would that even be? And and I had this one random fleeting thought, and that how thoughts come into your mind, and I'm like, if I really wanted to, I could just disappear from my entire life right now in this moment, and I would just be gone, and nobody would know what happened to me. And I'm like, because I was on my way back, and I decided to take the scenic route, and I drove through Smoky Mountains, or Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever driven through. It's beautiful, beautiful country. And it was just, I had to have thoughts over the years of going on like a hiking trip through the like the Pacific Crest Trail, or the Appalachian Trail, or some random thing like that, and of course, my health at this age is, I don't have the energy for it. It takes some serious work in order for me to have that level of energy to do a 1,000-mile hiking trip. But I had that fleeting thought, if I could just disappear right now, that is a thing. I could literally do this. I could change everything in my life at this moment if I really wanted to, if I was willing to to face the consequences of knowing that my family would wonder what happened to me for the rest of their lives, that I could, just disappear. And I could do that. I'm not saying I ever had the thought to do that, Angel. I was not like a literal thought of doing it. It was one of those weird fleeting thoughts of just, I could disappear right now and just become a missing person. And
You
for
said
me,
that. I knew you weren't serious, but the little overthinker, my brain was like, oh, yeah,
right,
like I knew you weren't
exactly.
serious, but
And that's the thing. I mean, we could do anything in this moment. Dan, you could decide that you're going to be a violinist, and you could ditch your house and ditch your this and ditch your bills and all of this stuff and just exit stage right and live in your car and start playing a violin and spend your money on lessons for that and food and live in your car. We could do these things, but it means the consequences, and the consequences are either disappointing our entire family or disappearing on our entire family, because those are the consequences. And I mean, not for everybody is that the consequence, but it is. I mean, we could do it. We could stop what we're doing right now, get in our car and drive to anywhere and take money out of whatever bank account we have and fly to anywhere and take money, or get on a boat and disappear, or any of those things we could do. We could shoot, we could even go to the extent of not spending any money and just drive to the nearest coast, find a random boat that has keys in it, and freaking take off. I mean, it's not an impossible thing. But what is it in our lives? Here's the big question. What holds us in this space that we're in right now? What is holding you where you are? And if you really examine that, you recognize, at least for me, it's my family. My family is my purpose. Sure, we have the business and I get enjoyment out of nature and we do these little things, but my purpose in life is literally my family. And if I didn't have my family, it would be a different story. My purpose would be something completely different. But and I think for each of us is that we can sit and we can watch on our phones and we can look at all these other people's lives and them doing their things and experiencing their experiences, and I wish I could be doing that, or I could do this, or I could da 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 da. But we are choosing in this moment to be where we are. We're choosing this life. Every moment that we stay in it, we're choosing it. And I think that a lot of times we get stuck in this idea that we don't have any choices, and yet we are choosing right here. This is what we're choosing. And I feel like that's empowering, in a lot of ways, is that I feel like over the years that has been a theme in my life, is to remember, I'm choosing this moment right here. It's not being forced on me. It's not that I'm stuck in it. It's not, I'm literally choosing it. And I could choose something different if I'm willing to face whatever the consequences of that choice is. So
I agree, but I also just want to point out, we don't have, our change doesn't have to be so extreme that we drop everything and don't leave a note and disappear. And we can learn to play the guitar. We can fit that into our daily routines. We can, and the learning part is kind of like the hurdles we have to go through. But we don't have to make the big extreme changes. You could start walking every day and work yourself up to maybe doing a few miles at a time, and then and do what I've heard people do. They don't hike the entire Appalachian Trail, but they pick a section, and then they do that section, because I mean it is long. So then you could still fulfill that part of your desire and your purpose and for yourself. And we can do that. We can fit these things in our lives. Though some things, that's what I was saying, like when we have our decisions to make when we're younger and we know the options, and we know how to kind of pick what we should do first. We say, well, hey, if you want to be a president, you're going to have to do your work on this from the start and do these things. Or if you want to be a doctor, you need to focus on from the start. Down the road, you can change, and you can always go back and be a painter later, or you could do, be a violinist. If you're going to be a violinist and be the best in the world, you want to start early. But if you just really love the violin and love music, and you just want to, you want to be good at it, enjoy it for yourself, then that's something you can fit in at any point in time, I think. So I think it's important to at least to consider those things. We can make decisions, we can fit these things into our lives where we are, but then in some situations we need to kind of figure out. I mean, it's like with any decision, we sort of have to know the purpose of why we want to get there. Like, if we're going to be a doctor, it's going to be hard to, some people don't even like go to college just to get, even finishing high school. So there's sacrifices there, but in the end, what is it that you want to do with your career? Is it that, because there can be such rewarding things in the end that make it all worthwhile. And so we sort of have to, and that's kind of sometimes the difficult part, is to see, come up with your purpose, and then, come up with the career, make a decision to go on that path, have the purpose, and then see the whole thing to where, hey, yeah, it's going to take the sacrifice, but then it's going to be worth it, because you're going to have to, I think we've talked about this before, is that everything is kind of like a push and a pull type of a thing. You push your way through until but you have to have something that's also pulling you to it. And eventually you get to the point where you're like, okay, you've got the momentum, and it starts to become, I don't know if necessarily easier, but you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you sort of have to have that faith that that's going to be there, and not be scared that you're making the wrong decision, because you have thought it through. And I just think for me, it would have helped to know early on that, hey, you can have multiple careers in your life, and there's enough time for that. But there are certain things that, if you want to give it a shot, you should start early, and the better your foundation, the more opportunities you have. So, Dan, did you have something you wanted to say? Sorry, buddy.
No. I was going to just, before we wrap up, because we're getting close to 8:30 now, so that's about our hour. And I know Samantha has a baseball game to get to for her grandkid. I actually know somebody who did disappear, literally. It's my mom down here, her husband, after they divorced. He never came and interacted with us after, just he left. They divorced before we started 9th grade. We've never heard from him, seen him, been around, anything like that. My brother's oldest daughter did a paper and stuff for school, and also did some research, I think, on family stuff. And she tried to do history on her grandfather, which would be my brother's dad. She did a search to try and find his name in anywhere and stuff, because we know he was from Compton, California, and stuff like that. She could not find him anywhere. You cannot do a search on him. You cannot find him anything. He is somebody who has literally picked up, left, disappeared, with no trace, no clue, no nothing. So yes, we have lived with that. Fortunately for us, me and my brother, we really, when he left my mom and stuff, and never tried to have continued relations with us, we just kind of said, pardon my French, people out there, but fuck it, he's not worth our time and energy. But for my niece and trying to know a little bit more about her history and her family stuff, she wanted to find out a little bit. And when, they would her and my brother were trying to look and research and try and find him somewhere, they couldn't. So in that case, yeah, you're right. If you want to disappear, you can disappear. Um, and, you know, but you have to have the wherewithal and desire to disappear, which he obviously did. So with that, I'll throw it back to you, Samantha, so we can see about wrapping it up.
Yeah, I mean, I know there are people that have just disappeared, and then there's other people who've just like exit stage right on their life and they become homeless and they're perfectly whatever in their life, we don't know. And but there's that whole other side of it, the whole family that's left behind and how their lives are affected by it. And it's for all you know, he could be just living on some tropical island having a good old time all by himself. Or who knows? I don't know. But
You're gonna be a survivalist, yeah.
yeah, it could be a survivalist
Island,
living in the
right?
Alaska wilderness, or or who knows? I don't. Some people,
Don't care.
yeah, doesn't exactly. Don't care. Doesn't matter. He's not part of your life, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, I don't know. Life's weird. We have all this opportunity ahead of us, and we can make a big change, or we can make little changes, like what Jason was saying. It's totally true. We could, and we just have to make the choice to do whatever it is that we want to do. And if it's some like if I did want to actually go and hike some big long trail, I could do it in shorts and not in short bits, not wearing short. I'd probably wear short. But I could do it in short bursts or whatever. Shoot, for that matter, I could do like a mile every, once a year, go and do a mile of it. I wouldn't have to work out or work up my energy or anything for a mile. But
uphill, a lot of it's uphill. So
right, exactly. In order for me to do that, then I gotta not do something else during that time that I would be doing that. So it's like, what do I want to do in any given moment is what it kind of boils down to. So right now I'm not really that motivated to go hike the Appalachian Trail, but it was real pretty driving through there. So I'll probably drive through there again. But okay, any final thoughts before we wrap up for today on this book? Awesome. Okay, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. If you're out there watching, then odds are good this is on YouTube. Give us a like, subscribe to our channel so you can get updated when we put new stuff on the channel. And if you want to join us, you can find us just by searching for either Saturday Morning Mastermind or Mindset Mastery Collective. Either one, you'll find us. And with that, have a great weekend. And that's it for today. Bye for now.